When I was born, doctors couldn't determine if I was a boy or a girl. I had what are described as ambiguous genitalia. My parents were confused, scared. They weren't able to tell anyone who knew they'd had a child if it was a boy or a girl.
The challenge of people who used to be called hermaphroditic, what we now call have intersex conditions, is that they really do threaten the idea that there's this clear natural boundary between the male and the female, because there isn't a clear natural boundary. So intersex begins to raise for us the question of what gender really means and to what extent it really matters, and that's very uncomfortable.
And until very recently, the medical establishment was determined that there should be no ambiguity.
The finding of ambiguous genitalia in the newborn is a medical and social emergency. When the cause is established and gender assignment is made, the abnormal genitalia must be corrected.
Max was just a year old when his phallus was surgically reduced. He was brought up as a girl, Judy, who underwent a whole series of operations until the age of 15, never once being told what they were for.
For 20-odd years, I was not allowed to talk to anyone about this and didn't tell, just like my mother didn't tell her best friend. I never even told my best friend.
By her late teens, Judy felt confused. She tried a relationship with a boy and a girl.
Whereas my male partner, boyfriend, had not commented on the differences in my genital anatomy, which incidentally I wasn't even aware of at the time. My female partner did. She said something. She said, "Boy, Jude, you sure are weird." I came away from that thinking of myself as a monster or a freak. And so I decided that I would avoid that upset by being with men. So I quite literally settled down with the next guy to come along.
Judy simply married a male friend from college, but the relationship was short-lived. Judy had met Tamara.
I was really excited. It was definitely a case of love at first sight. Sparks just flew. It was magic.
I looked at her and fell in love with her. It was love at first sight. She was breathtakingly beautiful.
Then a bombshell hit.
I needed my childhood immunization records. So I contacted my childhood pediatrician and found out he had retired, and the woman who had taken over his practice had someone photocopy my records and mail them. And I opened my mail in a diner in Center City, Philadelphia, and right after my name, which at the time was Judy Elizabeth Beck, were the words male pseudohermaphrodite. And I was devastated and dumbfounded. At the same time, it was almost a relief because I had a label. Not only did I know that I was a monster, but I could tell you, I could point in the textbook exactly what kind of monster I was.
We started corresponding and just had this flurry of letters and gradually just started little bitty disclosures and, you know, boy, when I first met you, you really turned my head, and I would write something back, and, you know, we eventually just called it peeling the onion because it was just little tiny layer after little tiny layer to get to the heart of it.
I think it was a Friday evening. We talked on the phone and talked right through dawn. And at some point during the night, I told her.
I just remember being so sad that she thought that this was going to make such a big difference in the way that I felt about her. And that she hadn't had anybody to help carry the weight of that her whole life. That she'd gone through essentially 20-something years thinking that if anyone knew this, they would just not want to be with her. And I said, you know, that doesn't make any difference to me whatsoever.
The couple lived an open lesbian relationship, but Judy's knowledge of her own medical history was gnawing at her.
I began to question how valid the lesbian identity was. If I'm not female, can I be a lesbian? And thinking in those vicious circles and undermining This precious shred of identity that I had finally obtained threw me into a very bad depression. I was hospitalized.
What emerged from this turmoil was a man. Judy became Max. The full transition took 4 years, and incredibly, the loving bond with Tamara survived. They live as man and wife with a child conceived by Tamara.
At first I was resistant. I was like, no, I finally got this lesbian relationship thing lined up. I've got a community and I know who I am and I understand the terms of my relationship and you can't go changing it on me in the middle. But on the other hand, I had a partner that I loved desperately who was miserable most of the time and uncomfortable in himself and uncomfortable in the world. He's a much more balanced, doing okay psychologically guy. And I guess I sort of chalk that up as a fair bargain.
This old man.
I don't have a male identity, and I don't know that I ever had a female identity, but I certainly don't have one now. And if pressed, I suppose I would say I have intersexed identity. I think of myself as intersexed, and I think I have a great deal more compassion than I ever did for men. I was at one point in my life a man-hating, separatist dyke.
Goofy's wife ran into the house. There was Goofy.
We've been together more than 10 years now, and we're still together. This is the same person that I fell in love with.
The hat on his head.
We all change over time. You get married at 19. By the time you're 69, you're not that girl of 19. Your body will change, you'll thicken in some places, maybe you'll lose weight. What we've had is just a more quick, condensed, radical transformation in one of us. And yes, his body has changed. It's going to keep on changing. Over the next 50 years, his hair's going to fall out and he's going to get wrinkles and he's still going to be my Max.